Welcome to an echo of the past channel. I'm Suleiman First, who some of you call Magnificent. And yes, you may think I'm somewhat justified. I ruled the Ottoman Empire at its greatest glory and strived to be a just but firm sultan. Today, I will tell you how I expanded our empire, laid siege to Budapest, tried to conquer Vienna, and wrote poetry to speak to the human heart. Prepare yourself for a story of my reign, ambition, and pursuit of perfection. I am Suleiman, and I was born in Trabzon in 1494, the son of Sultan Selim III. It was clear from birth that I was no ordinary child. The stars seemed to be in the right order, the angels may have been singing softly, and my first cry sounded almost like music. My father, Selim Fern, nicknamed the Cruel One, was an able sultan, but against me, that was just foreplay. While he was expanding his empire in the east, I was already a boy thinking of how to change Europe a little in my own image. I grew up with the best Ottoman upbringing. I learned Arabic, Persian, Turkish, and yes, I think I shone at it. I studied the Quran, military strategy, poetry, and mathematics. I was a bit of a Renaissance prince, with just a little more confidence that the world belonged to me. At 16, my father appointed me governor of Kaffa in the Crimea. Imagine that, a teenager with the keys to an entire province. But I was no average boy, I was Suleiman. Within a few months, I had organized Kaffa in such a way that people began to wonder if such a thing was even possible. Then, I was governor in Manisa, where I learned to govern by literally every decision. People liked me. Well, okay, maybe not all of them, but most of them did. And how could they not? They finally had a ruler who knew what he was doing. When my father died in 1520, it was clear who would become sultan. It was not a question of if, but when I would take over the world. The year 1520. My father Selim I was already a thing of the past, and I, of course, was ascending the throne. The Ottoman Empire was about to enter its most brilliant era, and well, who else would lead it but Suleiman the Magnificent? The coronation was an event the world had never seen before. Gold jewels, expensive fabrics, hundreds of dignitaries, and me in the middle of it all, certain that I was the one who held the key to the fate of the empire. People called me the Magnificent, and I just smiled, because honestly, they were right. But the throne isn't just about title and pomp. The first weeks of my reign were devoted to hard work, reorganizing the army, reforming the laws, fair trials, and overseeing every corner of the empire. I want my decisions to be not only correct, but elegant. Who would want to rule chaotically, right? I have a mixture of ambition and patience. I wanted the Ottoman Empire to be not only powerful, but modern, sophisticated, and respected. I approached it with humor and a little self-confidence because, why not? The world should know that its new sultan knows what he's doing. People soon noticed the change. Wiser administration, better organization of the finances and the army, protection of the trade routes, all under my watch. Some wondered, others rose up, but me, I just smiled because I knew that every step was moving me closer to a perfect empire. And so began a golden age, an era when the Ottoman Empire shone like a star in the sky, and I, Suleiman the Magnificent, stood at its center. Believe me, it was only the beginning, and the world was about to get used to my ambition and genius. After a few years on the throne, I knew there was more to being sultan than wearing a crown and writing poetry. The first big challenges were ahead, and I wanted to meet them with grace and a little of that typical confidence. The first destination was Belgrade, a city of strategic importance, a fortress that stood in the way of my empire. In 1521, I set out on a campaign. My generals were ready, my army was disciplined, and I, well, of course, ready to show who really ruled here. The siege was fierce, but within a few weeks the city surrendered, and I entered it feeling that the Ottoman Empire was growing by the day. But my ambitions did not end there. The next big target was Rhodes, the island that was the stronghold of the knights. I prepared carefully, planning every step and ensuring that my fleet was ready. In 1522, we began the siege. It was a tough battle, but disciplined troops and my strategy brought success. The knights eventually capitulated, and I was able to celebrate another victory. These first campaigns were not just about gaining territory. It was a demonstration of my abilities, military, strategic, but also political. Each victorious step increased my authority, strengthened the respect of my empire, and showed that Ottoman power was on the rise. And let's face it, it brought joy. Entering new cities, organizing new provinces, seeing my plans succeed. Well, it was no wonder people said I was special. But I knew this was just the beginning. There were much greater adventures and triumphs ahead. The year is 1526. The Ottoman Empire is growing, and I, Suleiman the Magnificent, am at the head of an army to show Europe that Ottoman power is not to be underestimated. Our goal is Hungary, a country that thinks it can resist our plans. On August 1526, the Battle of Mohács took place, and believe me, it was a spectacle worthy of my leadership. My generals and troops were perfectly prepared. Every soldier knew his task. And me? Well, I stood at the front, proudly knowing that every move was a step towards a perfect victory. King Louis II of Hungary, young and promising, thought he could face the Ottoman power. Well, that was a mistake. Our troops were organized, our tactics were sophisticated, and our cannons, well, it was a symphony of fire and metal. The battle didn't last long, just a few hours, and the outcome was clear. The Hungarian army was defeated, King Louis II fell, and I went down in history as the Sultan who opened the way to the heart of Europe. But it wasn't just about victory on the field. After the battle, we consolidated control of Hungary, organized the administration of the new provinces, and strengthened the defense of the frontier. Every move was deliberate. Every army movement had a purpose. People began to talk about my genius not only on the battlefield, but also in politics. And let's face it, being Sultan means not only conquering cities, but thinking one step ahead. Mohács was not just a battle, it was a symbol of my power, courage, and ability to turn ambition into reality. Thus began an era when the Ottoman Empire was not only growing, but entering the heart of Europe. And I, Suleiman the Magnificent, stood at its center, ready for challenges the world had never seen before.
The year was 1529. After the victory at Mohács, my ambitions moved on to the heart of Europe. Vienna, the gateway to Austria and the key to the continent, became the next goal of my empire. And me, well, I, Suleiman the Magnificent, could not resist the challenge to my abilities. In the summer, our army set out on the march. We were many, thousands of soldiers, artillery, supplies, logistics, all perfectly prepared. Every step, every movement was carefully thought out. And me? I stood at the front, elegant, proud, knowing that Europe would soon know who was in charge. The siege began in September 1529. The city was fortified, the defenders brave, but our tactics were well thought out. Artillery, sappers, ambushes, everything I planned was used. Still, Vienna resisted. The city held, and the weather didn't play into our hands either. Rain, mud, and winter soon on the way. I had to admit that even the best laid plans have their limits. After several weeks of intense siege, we were forced to withdraw. Failure, perhaps, but only temporary. The army was still strong, control of Hungary was firm, and my reputation, unshakable. Who else would attempt something so daring and survive with grace and pride? Vienna had shown us that Europe was no easy prey, but for me, it was a lesson and motivation. More challenges awaited, and I was ready. Every step, every struggle, every decision, all shaped the golden age of the Ottoman Empire and cemented my status as a sultan who was not afraid to dream big. And so ended my first encounter with the heart of Europe, humbled in the face of fierce defences, but still with my head held high, because the world should have known that Suleiman the Magnificent would not end until his empire reached its peak.
There was no time to rest after the Mohawk. The Ottoman Empire was growing, and I, Suleiman the Magnificent, was clear. Central Europe needed to know who ruled now. The Balkans and Hungary were our playground, and I wanted every corner of the continent to tremble at the thought of my name. In 1530 we made another march on Vienna. This time we were even better prepared, the army strong, the supplies secure, the planning perfect. But, as is sometimes the case, the weather, the terrain, and the tenacious defenders showed that even Suleiman could be hit. The Siege of Vienna was not successful, but that did not upset me. Each attempt, each challenge, has only strengthened my reputation as a leader who does not back down in the face of obstacles. In the meantime, I was not confined to Europe. To the east, Safavian Persia waited, a rival that had its ambitions, and I had mine. The campaign against Persia began in 1534 and continued for virtually a decade. We fought over fortresses, cities, trade routes, and strategic areas of the Caucasus. Every victory consolidated our control, every castle captured strengthened the borders of the Ottoman Empire. It was a combination of military strategy and political genius. The army was strong, the diplomacy was precise, and I stood at the center of it all, proudly watching the results of my command. Europe and Persia saw that the Ottoman Empire was not just a power, it was a symbol of order, strength, and elegance. During these years, I also consolidated the administration of the empire, reorganized the provincial government, introduced laws to ensure order, and promoted culture. Believe me, the combination of strength and civilization was exactly what the Ottoman Empire needed, and I could put it together with refinement. Thus was born an Ottoman Empire that stretched from the Balkans through Hungary to the Persian border, powerful, organized, and led by a sultan who knew how to dream big dreams and make them happen.
The palace is not just a place to wear crowns and write poetry. The palace is a battlefield. Words, smiles, glances, and whispers are as powerful as armies. And in the middle of it all stood Mustafa, my eldest son, capable, charismatic, popular with the soldiers and the people. A menace. Hürrem Sultan, my wife, a political genius and sometime master of intrigue, saw in Mustafa, her unwilling son, a problem. Her own sons had ambition, and Mustafa was too capable, too popular. The palace had become an arena where power clashed with ambition, and every move could change the fate of the empire. Reports, true or manipulated, suggested that Mustafa might aspire to the throne. Was this reality or a political game? We may never know. But the decision has been made. In 1553, Mustafa died, executed on his father's orders. A tragedy? Undoubtedly. But sometimes when you're Sultan of the Ottoman Empire, you have to consider more than family feelings. The power and stability of an empire often means heartbreaking decisions. Palace intrigue, ambition, and power all came together in one fateful moment. And me? I stood in the middle, determined, knowing that sometimes being Sultan means making the hardest decisions, even against your own blood. Being a Sultan is not just about battles and intrigue. Being a Sultan is also about creating an empire that shines culturally and spiritually. And I, Suleiman the Magnificent, set out to make the Ottoman Empire not only powerful, but also beautiful. In Istanbul, our capital, I started the construction of the Süleymaniye Mosque, a symbol of power, beauty, and elegance. The architect Mimar Sinan was my brilliant partner. Together, we created a building that was to enchant not only the eyes, but also the soul. The domes, the minarets, the details, everything was planned to show that the Ottoman Empire was as strong culturally as it was militarily. I didn't limit myself to mosques. I built palaces, bridges, baths, and schools. Each building had its purpose, practical, aesthetic, and symbolic. I wanted people to feel that they lived in an empire that combined power with beauty, discipline with elegance, and strength with art. I also encouraged literature and poetry. I wrote poems myself, and yes, I admit that some were good enough to read today. I supported scholars, poets, and artists because culture is as powerful as an army, just a little less noisy, but all the more enduring. Thanks to these projects, the Ottoman Empire became a center of culture and learning. People from all over the world came here to admire the buildings, learn, write, and create. It was like creating a symphony. Every stone, every verse, every detail of the architecture created a harmony that has outlived my own century. The golden age of the Ottoman Empire was not just about battle. It was a time when strength and beauty went hand in hand, and I was the one who united everything. And let's face it, there's nothing more satisfying than knowing that your empire can capture the hearts and minds of people, and not just their fears.
Although the Ottoman Empire experienced a golden age of culture, there was no time for idleness. The world was full of challenges, and I, Suleiman the Magnificent, knew that power without strength was an illusion. And so I continued my military campaigns, on land and at sea. In the Balkans and Hungary, I strengthened the army, fortified the defences, and made up what I could of the European borders. Europe had already remembered that the Ottoman Empire was no pushover, and I wanted everyone to know it, whether from a safe distance or on the battlefield. But the real challenge was the Mediterranean. Piracy, naval rivals, cities and fortresses that thought they could dominate the seas, all awaited my fleet. My ships, fully equipped and well organized, demonstrated naval excellence. Every battle was a combination of strategy, discipline, and my typical confidence, because when you're Suleiman, you expect your plans to work. The fleets secured control of the Mediterranean, boosted trade, and protected the Ottoman Empire from its enemies. Each victory meant not only an extension of power, but also respect and sometimes a little fear from rivals. Through all the battles and campaigns, I never forgot that a good leader must think ahead. Every port conquered, every battle won, was a step towards consolidating the empire and confirming my position as a sultan who not only conquers the world, but also organizes, administers, and cultivates it. Thus my reign continued, the Ottoman Empire grew, naval power was unchallenged. I stood in the midst of it all, proud, determined, and ready for the next chapters of history that were yet to come. The year is 1566. The Ottoman Empire was at the height of its power, vast, organized, culturally and militarily strong. And I, Suleiman the Magnificent, stood in the middle of it all, proud of what I had built. My life's campaign ended during the siege of Segetvar fortress. I was already 72 years old, an age when the body slowly gives up its service, even though the spirit still yearns to conquer the world. Health began to fail. The fatigue of long campaigns and old age took their toll. And yet, until the last moment, I was a sultan who stood in the midst of his army, who planned, organized, and inspired his soldiers. When I left this world, the empire was still strong and stable, ready to move on. My buildings, laws, poetry, cultural flowering, and military victories have outlived my body and become a legacy for generations. People called me magnificent, and let's face it, I deserved it. Not just for my looks, although, well, I like to admire myself a little, but mostly for what I accomplished, uniting an empire, building power, and becoming a legend in my own time.
My life has shown that being a sultan isn't just about power. It's about visions, decisions, sometimes hard choices, and the ability to leave the world better than you found it. I left an empire that inspired generations. And now you, if you're fascinated by history, intrigue, great figures and their stories, subscribe to the channel and don't forget to click the bell. Look forward to more adventures of the past with an Echo of the Past channel, where history comes alive and you can stand in the middle of history as proudly as I stood in my empire.